Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr.
Hello and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. On this episode, we're going to be discussing everything food and nutrition. How are you, Gemma?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Ellen?
I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to discussing this today.
Yes, I'm very excited about this topic today. I think it's very important, but equally very interesting and can go in many, many different directions.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't really give too much consideration to food and nutrition, especially when it's for themselves. They just tend to, grab whatever's the easiest and quickest on the go. But actually, when you think about it for children and the importance, makes you think, actually, for me, maybe I should revisit my diet a little bit and have a little think about what I'm popping in my mouth.
Yeah, those, like you say, those convenience foods. Are they actually good for you? Are they what they say they are on the tin?
That's it. Or are they just a marketeer's dream? Who knows?
Absolutely.
So, Gemma, what is healthy eating? What are we talking about?
So we are talking about the 5 different types of foods that we will be consuming. Healthy eating basically covers everything that we need to sustain a healthy body, exercise, and stay functioning, brain health, all those sorts of things. So the best place to find information on healthy eating is the Eat Well Guide, which is the NHS.
Yep.
And that basically illustrates how much of what we eat overall should come from each food group to achieve a healthy, balanced diet. So the different food groups are, we've got our fruits and vegetables, so promoting to have at least 5 of those a day.
Yep.
Starchy foods, so this includes whole grains like brown rice, wholemeal bread and oats, which often can be seen, some people may also call these carbohydrates. We've also got protein sources. So this is talking beans, pulses, fish, eggs, and lean meats.
Yeah.
We've got dairy or dairy alternatives. So milk, cheeses. And again, focusing on the lower sugar or no sugar options if you're going for alternative milk, so soya, oat. And then we've got oils and spreads. So thinking about the sort of your fats as well, and sort of that's fats in a small amount, so a small amount of oil. And then we've got our water and hydration as well. So drinks, focusing again on water and milk, opposed to fizzy drinks, pops, squash. Also fruit juices, very high in sugar. So again, prioritizing water or milk and less of the juicy stuff.
I like it. Less of the juicy stuff. Yeah, absolutely right. And in preparing for the podcast, I always like to do my research, and it very much reminds me of, so I recently took a trip to Amsterdam, and we stayed just outside of Amsterdam, and we went to a cafe called Le Gomme, and I have to excuse if I'm pronouncing that completely incorrectly, but Le Gomme is a Swedish lifestyle concept. So even though we were not in Sweden at all, but it means not too much, not too little, just the right amount. And I thought that was really applicable here for our healthy eating, food and nutrition. And it's about getting a little bit of everything, not too little of something, not too much of something, just the right amount. And as you say, so many things that we eat contribute to all of our health. So carbs, you need carbs for your brain and your body, you need it for your energy. So you need to be eating bread, rice, potatoes. Too much of it, absolutely, you're going to put on a few pounds. Little of it though, and your cognitive function goes. Protein, making sure that you're eating enough makes your enzymes and hormones work properly, but eating too much can affect your liver, and so on and so forth. So I looked into like our vitamins, so we're talking about vitamin A from carrots, potatoes, the orange things really, for your vision, skin, immune system. vitamin C for immune system as well, your B vitamins, your folate, things like eggs, grains, leafy greens to release your energy. So yes, having your carbohydrates, but actually you need vitamin B to release that energy from your carbohydrates. Vitamin D is a classic one as well. I think we all know the link between calcium and vitamin D, for example. So calcium being a nutrient, we need vitamin D to absorb calcium in our bones and teeth. So it's not enough just having vitamin D on its own, you have to have the calcium with it. So when we're talking about a healthy and varied diet, that's why we need it. We need things to be eaten together to help the absorption. So quite often, for example, you may see things about zinc or drinking plenty of water. Why do we need to drink water? One, stay hydrated, but two, it also helps aid digestion of food. So when we are actually eating all of our healthy, varied foods, you need your water to be able to digest them and absorb them. So it all works together in a nice little ecosystem that is our body.
My mum actually always used to say to me, eat the rainbow as well. And it's not just eating your leafy greens. Yes, your leafy greens are good for you, but actually, you know, if your plate is varied in colour, you're doing good. You know, sort of thing, isn't it? Bringing in all those different colours. And like you say, you need these vitamins. Some of these vitamins can only be absorbed, and these minerals can only be absorbed when they're coinciding together. So, for example, iron can only be absorbed with vitamin C. You know, so it's eating a piece of fruit before you have, or having vitamin C on your plate with your leafy greens to make that happen. So it's just being conscious of those sorts of things and being aware of how to combo play that healthy eating element as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's so interesting because it also makes me think of the order in which to eat food, because that affects your blood sugar. So something I recently learned, I mean, after all my years in life, I've learned that you should eat your vegetables first, then protein, then fat and carbs. And in that order, it stops your blood sugar from spiking. And I never knew that.
Interesting.
Oh, how interesting is that?
And it's funny because I think there is kind of a natural.
So I admit veg first because they're my least favourite part of the meal. I like to end
Well,
on
that's
a half.
it. You know, you think about your childhood and you eat all your veggies first, don't you?
Exactly.
And then that's out the way, and then you save the good stuff.
Exactly. You save your roast potatoes and your roast dinner to last. It's the best bit. But yeah, vegetables, then protein, then carbs. Oh, I like that.
I think it's also kind of your portioning. Again, that's kind of partly what the Well plate is talking about, is those portion sizes of things and kind of how many what your plate looks like, sort of in relation to how much of everything as well. And so half should be half thinking your fruits and vegetables, quarter proteins, quarter carbohydrates, and a sliver of fats. Really, as well, isn't it?
Good visual reminder of how we should be building those plates. We all love a beige buffet, especially at Christmas. Can't wait for buffet season. Oh, we've had picky bits over the summer. Well, it's slightly healthier, I always think, because there's usually at least cucumber sticks.
I think also summer it's easier to eat healthier sometimes, isn't it? Because you're not eating the hot casserole stodgy things like that, you know. Dumplings, you know, always makes me think of, you know, it's thinking of those sorts of things, isn't it? And kind of how are we still incorporating in our winter menu actually what we need to be as well.
Absolutely. Let's have a little soup alongside our sandwich, or maybe not have a triple sandwich from the meal deal, maybe just have a normal double and have a banana alongside it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Balance the two. La gomme, not too little, not too much.
Listening to your body, I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Listening to your body and being aware of that. So one thing that I often think about when you think about not too much is kind of boils down to a parenting thing as well, as can't get down from the table until you've finished, or you can't have pudding until you've eaten everything on your plate. A child's stomach is the same size as their hand. Like a fist. The child's fist is the size of their stomach. So think about how much food that child has, and if you're telling them to eat that entire plate that you've piled high because they need all their greens, if they need to finish that plate before they get pudding, of course a child's going to force that food down. And again, it's that installing habits I will openly say now, I can't leave anything on my plate, even if I'm full up. I can't leave my plate. That's got to be empty. So that, again, it develops those unhealthy habits, unhealthy relationships with food. If you're being told you have to finish that plate before you can have a pudding, a nice treat,
Absolutely.
when actually that child's full to the brim, that they're going to force feed that themselves so that they can have that bit of pudding, or even if it is just a yogurt. But actually, is that a healthy habit that we should be installing in children?
Exactly. Absolutely.
So what's currently happening when we talk about food, Ellen? What's going on in the world of food, whether that's any legislations, any bans on anything? Is there anything happening?
Well, it's actually been in the news quite a bit recently. So the government from the 1st of October banned the buy one, get one free offers in supermarkets and restaurants on unhealthy food and drinks. So you no longer go into a supermarket and there'll be a buy one, get one free on, bags of crisps, chocolate, that kind of thing. It also affects in restaurants like Nando's, where you've got refillable drinks.
I was going to ask if it relates to that as well.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. So it's technically buy one, get one free. You pay for your refillable drink and you're refilling your full fat Coke. You shouldn't be able to do that anymore. And it is controversial because there is an element of adult choice for an adult to make that choice and make that decision for themselves. But equally, the government is trying to support healthier choices in people to support tackling obesity in the UK. So I think there's always a balance there. It must be very difficult to legislate something like sugar and obesity, where you're trying to support the NHS and try to help people, but equally you're relying on people from either following those rules or agreeing with it as well. Must be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to sort of the role modelling element, doesn't it? We talk so much about role modelling in childcare, and actually children need to see that role model of the parents drinking healthy drinks and not always going for a can of Coke, not always going for fizzy, juice, whatever it is. We need to be making that as a healthy choice for ourselves, as well as that role modeling element for the children.
And what's around them has a massive impact. If they're seeing that unhealthy foods are more glamorized or they are promoted to them, that's going to have a negative effect on them. They don't understand or know yet the impact on their body. Of course they don't. Of course they're going to want the ice cream rather than a piece of fruit for pudding.
Absolutely.
It tastes
Absolutely.
nicer. But it's up for us as the adults to educate them on actually this would be more nourishing. I've also seen a thing that you should pair, if you're having something like a stereotypically unhealthy food like a piece of chocolate or whatever, you should pair it with something healthy as well, so that you're responding to your body's need for hunger rather than an emotional response to food. Not always, that sometimes you just want a piece of chocolate if you're feeling sad or whatever, it's not a problem. But to also pair it with a chopped up apple or a handful of nuts or something like that, to then give yourself balance, so you're not denying yourself that either. It's about making healthier choices.
Absolutely.
So, and talking of sort of like high fat, salt, sugar, those kind of things on TV from the 1st of October as well, in the same kind of ilk as the ban on buy one get one free foods, the government have restricted advertising online and on TV for children's exposure to unhealthy food marketing, which I think is a very positive step.
Now, can you clarify that a little bit more, Ellen? Is that is that after Watershed? Is that after 9 p.m. or before 9 p.m. or is that completely?
Well, I don't think you can ever do it completely.
No.
And I don't think there's a need, because then it becomes a taboo. And I think that's equally an argument of why it shouldn't happen, because if you restrict something and tell someone you can't have it, first thing that they do,
you're going to want it more.
Is that we are all susceptible to that. And I know for a lot of people, things like McDonald's, it is a treat, but as soon as they see it, that's what they want, But the restrictions is on online and on TV advertising for high sugar, high fat, high salt foods before 9 p.m. So it is, as you say, dedicated straight for the watershed to reduce how much children are seeing. What it doesn't do, interestingly, is talk about radio, for example. So adverts for, I know McDonald's advertise on the radio, for example, picking on McDonald's, but
Yeah.
it's focusing more on that visual marketing and advertising than hearing anything, which is interesting. And it does make sense to an extent, because what you see is kind of what you maybe
I was going to
sometimes
say, when yeah, exactly, you eat with your eyes and all those sorts of things, don't they? So yeah,
exactly. So it's and not a complete ban. I think that's sometimes what it always comes across as, is that they're banning everything unhealthy, you know, and sugar tax and all of this. I don't feel personally that's what's happening, but restrictions and trying to, again, reduce that exposure for children towards unhealthy foods. Something else I've also seen in the news is the NHS's obesity plan. So they're the NHS's 10-year obesity plan, so aiming at reducing obesity levels. And one of the key concepts in the plan is to work with food manufacturers and food retailers to reduce the average daily intake for an adult by 50 calories. And they think that will save millions of pounds for the NHS. Just 50 calories.
I mean, there's going to be outrage in the size of a Mars bar again.
Quite possibly. I mean, it's an ever growing battle, I think, between Cosy Lives and them reducing pack sizes. You get, 4 fingers of fudge in a pack now, not 5. It's a bit of a scandal, but it's the same price, which absolutely, I think there is an element of potential, a little bit of profiteering happening there, but also I think it is in line with government guidance on reducing the pack size, or reducing the size of a portion to help us all reduce how much we're eating.
Do you think that will make a difference? Do you think that obesity plan sort of that having that smaller size packagings is going to do it? Do you think that is going to be a fundamental element that's going to do it, or do you think people will just go, well, they're smaller, so I'll just buy 2 of them?
I'll have 2, yeah.
And actually, they've probably now gone over 100 calories, what they would have, so.
I do agree. I mean, personally, if it was me, I'll have 2. I'm greedy, but I would rather, actually, to be quite honest, personally, I would rather things like the gym was cheaper.
So this was then going to be my next question, is kind of thinking, actually, is there an element of physical and they have done a big push, didn't they? They did Change for Life. That was a big exercise campaign the government did quite a few years ago, wasn't it? And that was sort of building an exercise, but ultimately, if your body needs exercise to function properly, to talk, we're talking about lung function, we're talking about heart function, we're talking about that healthy relationships with yourself, with your body generally. And actually, is the NHS or government cutting that 50 calories, is calorie counting even a thing that people maybe are doing? And actually, to reduce sizes of packaging, is that actually going to make a blind bit of difference? Or is bringing up, actually, we're going to support gyms further and making gyms more accessible, whether that's reducing the cost, giving their funding to gyms, or even just bringing out more, for example, like park runs. How big are park runs now? Absolutely. And if the government were to initiate something like that, build that element of community, and actually, definitely, would the exercise be more important than your 500 calories? Because I can assure you, when I exercise, I burn more than 50 calories.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think the more you restrict something, the more people push back on it. And it goes the other way. People don't like that. Of course not. As an adult, you want to make those choices. And as a child, you want to make those choices as well. You want a bit more freedom to choose what you want for dinner. And you value having that voice as a child. And it's important to have that voice and that control over what you're eating. So I think by supporting better education, certainly in
Mm-hmm.
schools. A lot of us have now got to our adults and are only just understanding what macros are, for
Absolutely.
example, in
Yeah.
food. And that's largely because of an unhealthy relationship with food previously, because our parents didn't know either. I think that's much more valuable, in my opinion, than restricting somebody at source and not trusting them to make the right choices. If you educate them on what choices to make, then that's up to them.
There is the element of, you know, you can bring in sort of a safeguarding element, as we normally can on everything we talk about here, Ellen. But there is a safeguarding element here, and there is
Definitely.
you can talk about neglect here. If you are neglecting
For sure.
to feed your child appropriately, whether that is with healthy
Absolutely.
foods, that equally comes under neglect as well. Whether, you know,
For sure.
even if it's feeding them bad foods rather than not feeding them anything, you know, we need to be thinking about that as an overweight child. A 2-year-old doesn't sit and feed.
Yeah.
That is, you know, children become overweight because they are being fed the inappropriate foods for them.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important part on role modeling, actually, because in actively educating children about health and nutrition, there is a duty on parents, carers, workers with children, whoever's around them, to educate them and make sure that their development needs are met. And that includes ensuring that they've got a healthy diet. So whether they are obese or severely underweight, I see children both ways as well. If they are not having a healthy diet and maintaining a healthy weight, it absolutely is considered as neglect, and in some cases emotional abuse as well. So there is a very important aspect to that role modeling for healthy diet, and a responsibility to role model that for children, both in terms of their physical development and their brain development is massively important, but also because of that safeguarding aspect as well, that it is considered abuse. Absolutely correct.
So what else is happening at the moment? So obviously we've just had the UFS changes.
Oh yes, yeah.
And in that there was quite a lot of changes to safer eating. So this was one of the big topics within the UFS that changed in July this year, 2025. So there's quite a lot in that, but essentially we've got subheadings of, we're talking dietary information. So early years providers will be required to obtain information about each child's special dietary requirements, preferences, food allergies and intolerance before they enter the setting. This information must be shared with all staff members to ensure safety during meal times. Again, I hope that most nurseries have that in place already. But again, building that parent partnership, so if any of those intolerances change or anything happens, we're aware of those as well. We're being kept up to date with those as well.
Definitely.
Also, allergy action plans. So for children with allergies, providers must work with parents and healthcare professionals to create allergy action plans. These plans should be regularly updated as allergies can develop at any time. So thinking about those different, again, your body changes very regularly and allergies can just develop.
And preferences as well, I suppose, that falls into that, and more perhaps in the dietary information kind of category is if a child or the parent wishes the child to follow certain dietary needs like veganism or vegetarian, that's perfectly fine as well. Or, you know, maybe they only eat halal or kosher. Not a problem. You need to be respecting that for that child.
Absolutely. So one other thing that's coming into play is the safety element. So the meal safety oversight. So a designated person will be responsible for checking that meals are safe for each child to eat. The oversight is crucial for preventing allergic reactions and ensuring that children receive appropriate meals. So hopefully that will kind of bring in the element of size as well. So how much children potentially are being fed as well.
And again, making sure that every child is receiving a decent meal. So if they have a dairy allergy or for example, that they're getting an adequate alternative meal.
An equal. Yeah, exactly that. just mashed potato without the butter and milk.
It.
It doesn't need to be a whole separate, completely different, boring meal.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, we're having, spaghetti bolognese today. Or sorry, you don't eat meat. You can just have the spaghetti. Not
just
okay.
Have plain spaghetti. Yeah, absolutely. So the supervision.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really important and baffles me, the fact that this has had to come in, really.
Crazy.
But practitioners are encouraged to observe children closely whilst they're eating. They should sit facing the child to intervene quickly in case of choking or allergic reactions. Any choking incidents must be reported and parents should be informed. Paediatric first aider must be present. If you're not doing that already in setting, why the flip not?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming from every perspective to engage with that child in conversation and have meal times as a positive positive experience, especially if they're fussy eaters or potentially we'll go down the sort of mental health kind of aspect in a second. But absolutely, from a health and safety perspective, why wouldn't you be watching that food, for heaven's sakes? Of course you need to.
And again, this is across all ages. This shouldn't just be for babies. This shouldn't just be for the younger groups. This needs to be across the ages. That can happen to anyone. It could happen to us at tea time. As adults, it can happen. Of course it can. So being aware of those things. So the other one is the introduction of solid foods. So this is the last bit of the change in the UFS. So providers will need a plan to plan the introduction of solid foods in consultation with parents, ensuring that this process is safe and appropriate for each child.
Interesting. What does that mean?
So I think for me, what I read this as is back in the day, a few years ago, quite a while ago, you used to do, you had the, children would be weaned onto solid foods. So you would have puree foods. You'd start maybe with mashed banana. Whizzed up broccoli, and it was always sort of smush paste, and then you'd add in a little bit more chunky as the child get more confident. You'd add in a little bit of chunk, bit of rice, kind of make pieces a little bit bigger or whatever, so they kind of had to build that chewing option, and then they would go on to solid foods. However, parenting styles have kind of changed, and a lot is happening now with baby-led weaning. So this is less of a whizzed process, shall we call it? And more of so we're giving the children like the inside piece of battens of cucumber or some soft pieces of bits of food. So the children can pick and nibble away at things off of their own tray or plate. It's not a case of getting mashed or whizzed up food. Or similarly, a lot of parents do kind of a half and half. So the children can kind of pick on little bits themselves, build that independence, but again with super soft squishy stuff, or kind of parboiled carrots, so they are partly cooked, or fully cooked carrots cold, things like that, so they are mushy already, again in the baton shape. But that's something that children can kind of play with, explore, whilst also being fed the mush, the whizzed. So again, finding out from the parent which way they want their child to be learning to eat as well. And again, there are benefits on both sides, absolutely. There are benefits of even just giving the child the whiz plate and allowing them to explore that. Some parents don't want that. They want their child to be fed, clean environment. That's what happens.
Sure.
Equally, it's very important for the child to eat food, real food that they can chew. It's quite easy at risk of choking that people keep them on the whizzed or the mashed too long. If the child isn't chewing, the child's mouth isn't working properly. The child isn't moving their muscles appropriately, and often can lead to a delay in speech as well.
I was just going to ask, does a delay speech in communication?
So it's really important that the children are doing that, those chewing motions, exploring kind of all those muscles in their mouths as well. And that again supports, we're thinking the holistic development of a child. We're talking about healthy eating, but actually we're going into everything else. So that will support the communication skills for that child and their ability to talk.
Definitely. And communication with the parent on things that they like and dislike, but also motor skills as well. I suppose that comes into it.
It's absolutely, that coordination thing.
Absolutely, hand to mouth, and very interesting.
And nurseries have got preferences that they want to do whiz food or whatever, absolutely, but that might not be the choice of the parent. So being aware of what those choices are and how they want to support that child onto solid foods, and when as well, because that's a big factor. Again, I've had children 4 months, 3-4 months be eating solid foods just because they were so desperate to be kind of getting on, going and doing things. And some don't go until later. So again, it's all dependent on the parents. So absolutely having those conversations, how and when that should be happening.
And listening to the child as well, and in different
completely
respects. I can completely appreciate that. Completely baby-led weaning can be a time-consuming process.
Absolutely, and that's one of the deterrents. That is one of the deterrents, and often can be quite mucky. But again, they are exploring these foods and understand. It builds that understanding of what food is. Just to give a child a whizzed broccoli.
They've got no recognition of.
I don't know what that is, or textures or anything like that. Nothing about a whizzed broccoli is what a broccoli actually is like. Really, even the taste probably changes slightly even.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think, again, when we were talking about being present in meals and having oversight from a safety perspective, and we were talking about actually building that bond and relationship with the child as well, and for their relationship with food, what I think I've observed, which is a positive practice, is introducing a food to a child. Obviously it depends a little bit on age. If they're 4 months, then less interaction than potentially an older child, but presenting them with food and saying, this is broccoli, how does it feel, does it taste nice, is it soft, talking about that food, rather than I did go into a nursery. It was years and years and years ago, and I was waiting actually to invigilate an exam. It was nothing to do with early years at all for me, but I went in and the practitioner was just sort of like frisbeeing pieces of toast down onto a table. There were no plates, there was no like chairs for the children to sit. It was just this like trough in the middle of the room that she was just flinging bits of toast on, and I thought, that's really there's a lot of indignity in that. Just here you are, I like to think we've evolved a little bit further than farm animals, but
just give them the time. It doesn't take a lot to sit with them.
What would you like on your toast? Would you like toast to start with? Not
do you even want this flung at your face?
Flung at the table for them to pick off of. Oh gosh, what a terrible
and do you know what, that kind of takes I mean, this is not going to be a pet peeves the whole way through, but one of my biggest pet peeves is everyone gets their food. No, shh, you're eating. Quiet. We're eating. It's lunchtime now. It's enough. Quiet. No, nobody does that at home. If you're in a home environment at a restaurant, why is food being almost a punishment? Why are children not allowed to talk? Why, have those conversations? Of course, if a child's screaming at another across the table, of course you can ask them to use their inside voices, but actually developing that personal, social, emotional, and that communication skills, and just wanting to be at the table with their friends should be an enjoyable experience. Don't rush the process. And again, children who are just slow eaters, being aware from their parents, if they go, they're just a really slow eater. All right, I've sat for 2 hours before as a child's just sat and eaten their lunch. He's just having a nice chit chat with me. And you just sit there and you let them eat away. Other children might come up and ask you questions. Of course, I talked, but just be with them and encourage them to eat. And actually, he ate more than he ever had because he was just not being, come on, we're gotta go. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Not at that age. I completely understand it in perhaps preschool and readying transition to school. Then it's in the child's best interest to encourage them to hurry up a little bit, and because they will face timetable issues at school when they get to school, and that school readiness. Completely get that. But otherwise, don't make it a thing.
Absolutely.
I think that's when problems happen,
Oh, completely. And I think that's it. And that's where these issues can stem from. Absolutely.
So give me some stats on food and nutrition there. What is the science or the studies behind food and nutrition telling us? Why does it matter?
So one big thing, we've already touched on it already, is obesity rates.
Yeah.
Among children aged 4 to 5, a study in 2023 and 24, between those, in England, 9.6% of those 4 to 5-year-olds were obese. That's round up, that's 10% of children that year were obese.
Blimey. Wow.
Mm.
And that's
Big.
very young to be obese as well. That's a lot of eating done in not a very long
And equally,
space
how
of
are they
time.
getting to that point?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, nurseries can provide as much healthy foods as we can, but actually,
Mm-hmm.
where's this stemming from? Where's this,
Yeah.
where's
Mm-hmm.
the, like we said, of the maybe lack of understanding of healthy
Mm-hmm.
eating and kind of educating that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for children, this was between 2022 and 23, for age 10 to 11, so later on progressed, we've carried on and kind of progressed on. So in England again, 36.6% were overweight or obese.
Really? A third? That's quite the jump. Holy moly. That shocked me. Wow.
Well, and that's, So that's a high number.
That is.
That is a big number, and you can kind of see, I understand that they're of different years, these two findings, but actually you can see if we're starting at 10% 4 and 5-year-olds, that's only going to increase by 10 to 11-year-olds.
And that's not puppy fat anymore either, because that's something else I hear is, oh, they've just got
They'll grow
puppy fat.
into it.
They'll grow into that. Yeah. Actually, no, that is proven to us that there's potentially a little problem there and a little bit of re-education that needs to happen then.
And if in 5 years that's
tripled,
got 20% extra, if we add another 20% in by the time they're 15, does that mean that 15-year-olds, we're talking over 50% of 15-year-olds are overweight? Because if that's the correlation we've got, that should be where it should be. And that's not equally.
No,
they're not even adults at that point, and if we've got 50% of under that, that's quite shocking.
Crazy. Wow.
But equally, often obesity is spoken about in England, but on the other side, we've also got malnutrition.
Right.
Which again, often isn't spoken about in England. Or if you think about malnourished, malnutrition, you think about other countries, absolutely. And you sort of, you can picture those children malnourished. So for children aged 4 in England between 2021 and 2022, malnutrition. So this is defined as weight for height greater than or less than 2 standard deviations.
Okay.
Was 7% were malnourished.
Oh, wow.
7% of children were malnourished. That's 4.
Wow, that is a lot higher than you'd expect. So we've got almost two ends of the spectrum there as well. And malnourished, are they meaning underweight, or are they meaning potentially overweight as well, but malnourished in the sense that they are eating too much of a particular food group? Junk.
Not getting the nutrients or
so under and overweight potentially in that category. Gosh, that is significant.
So again,
wow.
So you've only got, so that would be only 80% of 4-year-olds. Again, if we put those two stats we spoke about before, only 80% of children are at the right place.
Interesting. We would very much like that to be 100%. I would very much expect that to be much nearer than 100%. That's very surprising. Very surprising. Especially when we have the means and capability and guidance in our country. We're extremely lucky that we have access to a vast variety of food and food groups. It's not it shouldn't be something that's poor. Interesting. Wow.
And we also have, between January and June So that's 6 months. 6 months in 2020. There were just under 2,500 admissions of under 16-year-olds with malnutrition into hospitals.
Wow. Gosh, that is quite a heavy impact then on the NHS. So obviously
absolutely,
it's quite widely known about the impact of malnutrition and obesity and being underweight on the body and the body's development, but also then having a wider impact on availability of healthcare and the impact on the NHS services.
I think it's also important to kind of bring this home a little bit more and make this kind of a smaller radius, because currently we've spoken about UK.
Yep.
So thinking Hampshire. In Hampshire, in 2023 to 2024, 21.5% of reception year children in Hampshire were overweight or obese.
Wow.
So that's 1 in 5 children starting school are already obese.
Wow. And this is considered quite an affluent area as well for Hampshire.
Absolutely.
It can't even be related to a socio-economic kind of position, really, not conclusively. That's quite
because that's often kind of what you do, isn't it? You kind of go, well, you know, socioeconomic, it's easy, you know, it's cheaper to buy the ready meals, the ready sorted, you know, it's the ready, you know, those beige foods, as it were. It is, but we are an affluent area in Hampshire. We are, you know, or one of the more affluent counties of England, and that's still the case.
Yeah, and obviously we're not saying that that isn't a case, that in some areas in Hampshire that may happen, that it's a socio-economic issue, but that seems disproportionate, that there's you know, 1 in 5 children, that doesn't seem to correlate very well. So very interesting to consider the scale of this kind of problem, really, and why food and nutrition is such a heavily important aspect in early years.
And again, this kind of tallies into, you know, the NHS with their 10-year obese plan. If we're already starting children in school already obese, what are we doing to change that in the 10 years? You know, to reduce those numbers going into the NHS.
Absolutely.
Because that's a strain. That is such a strain for the NHS.
Massively. What can we do in the real world then? What can we do to support and promote it? How can we help?
So again, kind of bringing through kind of everything we've sort of spoken about, family mealtimes, promoting that positive role modelling as well. You know, we've spoken a lot about that, and kind of strongly influencing the child's food habits. You know, it doesn't need to be finish that plate and then you get this, or you get a reward for that. Not using food as a reward as well is often a thing, you know, sort of when they're potty training, you get, you know, Smartie or something like that. Actually, you know, going to sticker charts instead. For children, those are equally as rewarding. It doesn't need to be a sweetie, a lollipop, those sort of things. And or just encouraging that healthy element, just giving the children those varieties, those eating the rainbow chances, and not being a easier said than done for everything in life, but not being a sucker for marketing. You know, actually looking at the labels on foods. If it's a bar, a nut bar, or a fruity bar, or something like that, look at those ingredients. Find out if it's got less than 5 ingredients. Crack on. But what are those ingredients? If you can't pronounce those ingredients, probably shouldn't be eating it.
Absolutely. If you can't point to it on a shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want
Being
it in your
conscious
body?
of food, where it's coming from.
Agreed.
And how those ready meals or those convenience foods are actually made, and encouraging that. But also we need to be supporting parents to understand that as well. So talking to parents about and educating parents about healthy eating as well. And again, not singling out one parent because that one child is obese or anything like that, but talking to everybody, you know, talking to all parents, and, you know, yes, it's okay to have a picky meal here and there with your beige, but actually, should that be an every night? No.
Absolutely. Something I really think is underused is using budget-friendly meals and utilizing freezer and meal prep. So often, as we've said, time and money tends to come into healthy eating and be a barrier. Both of those things tend to be a barrier, but encouraging children and parents mainly to look at budget-friendly meals or role modeling in the nursery where there might be some batch cooking opportunities and ways that you can save money. So there could be activities that you could do with the children or send home for the children to do at home with the parents about creating a healthy budget-friendly meal or helping them to identify ways that they can grow food, perhaps. You know, there's nothing to say that they can't, in a window box, grow some tomatoes in the summer or some strawberries. Probably not in a window box, it might be a bit tall for tomatoes, but certainly some strawberries, you know, different little bits and bobs that you can do to help encourage healthier eating at home. I think they often forget in all sorts of forms of education about why we need certain food types and that diets aren't necessarily just calorie counting. So going back to where we were saying about the desire to reduce everybody's daily intake by 50 calories, calories and macros aren't the same thing. So I think there needs to be a bit of education as well for children, for parents, that prioritizing protein, vitamins, minerals is really important, as is balancing calories, but to have balance is key. Too much of one thing is never going to be good. Something I think that's important to mention here as well, we always try to bring it back around to our safeguarding and our mental health, is to watch out for creating mental health difficulties as well. We often veer into eating disorders when we're talking about food and nutrition. So it could be disordered eating, so whether that's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, or whether even in young children, things like avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, our ARFID, that you may or may not have heard about if you're listening. There is a fairly new eating disorder that's been recognised, and it's where children are extremely selective eaters and they have very little interest in eating food, and it actually becomes to develop into being an issue. So quite often children will rush to finish their dinner or not want to eat because they want to go out and play. That's very normal, you know, that's absolutely, or they want to be chatting to their friend instead of eating. That's very normal. But where it then becomes a problem is when they then have very little interest in food and they actively avoid eating food for whatever reason, or they may eat a limited variety of preferred food, which can lead to poor growth and poor nutrition. And I think there is a distinction between other additional needs such as autism that perhaps can influence food and nutrition and what a child may eat. ARFID is a mental health condition. It is separate. Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish the two, and that's where bodies like CAMHS and GP practice will get involved to identify where that kind of eating need and disorder is, what's causing it and how to support and help. But it's also very, very important to watch out for those kind of things. And in having those conversations with children and making mealtimes that sociable event, it helps to avoid that kind of stigma around food sometimes of, oh, you know, you're eating too much or you're not eating enough and making it a big thing. And having an awareness of the mental health aspect of food as well.
Absolutely. And what was that called? Sorry, Ellen?
So it's called ARFID, the Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder.
Okay. Yeah,
so
interesting.
Definitely something to read up on if it's something unfamiliar to our listeners. It is something fairly new, but
fairly new, but equally fairly common. You know, I've worked in a lot of nurseries with a lot of children, and I can think of many children that probably had that as an
100%.
undiagnosed, unrecognised, and often, like you say, you go, oh, are they autistic? Do you think there's some tendencies there? And then you kind of go down that route. But actually, if it's just this, I don't say just as it's a minor thing, but it's not related to that autism element.
We all know a child that's a picky food eater. You know, they've got anxiety about food, they lack interest in food. We all know children like that, or are very sensitive to certain textures or smells, or I don't want my beans touching my potatoes, or whatever it might be. And yes, again, you know, there is an autism element to that, but there's also this ARFID. So definitely something to have a look into and research a little bit more on.
Yeah.
So what impact can this have on early years with children or practitioners?
I think what is the most important for me is that you must know about healthy eating. Whether this is for your own personal growth or whether this is for the children in your nursery. But what that means regarding your food groups and how to promote this within setting, as well as that role modelling. That needs to be seen. We need to be healthy people. We need to be encouraging that, you know, when I arrived on my bike this morning, or, you know, things like that, you know, talking about those different things that we are just doing.
Normalise it.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be an exercise thing. You know, Gemma rides her bike into work. Okay. You know, and then they starts a conversation. Well, do you have any bites? Do you do that? Or, you know, what did you have for breakfast? What, you know, that we had that because that gives us lots of energy. You know, just talking about those different things and why those things are good for us, and making it normal and regular conversations with the children. So again, talking about it. It shouldn't have to be, oh right, okay, so I've got to do a healthy eating activity today. No. It shouldn't be an activity element. It should just be happening.
Yeah.
We're all eating. We're all doing it.
Absolutely. They don't know what healthy and unhealthy is, remember?
Yeah, we need to be educating them that side of things. And again, like we've already said, pairing that alongside the physical activities, those hobbies, those encouraging to be outside, you know, doing those sorts of things as well.
Absolutely. So in terms of places for information on food and nutrition then, so you mentioned earlier about the Eat Well plate. Where else can we find information and tips and guidance?
Yeah, so obviously we've got the EYFS with a few changes. There is sort of food and nutrition within there. We've got .gov, as always. .gov is a great place to find up-to-date resources on it. But also we've got the NHS Change for Life. We spoke about that a little bit as well. Sort of those, it's got a lot of family-friendly ideas and suggestions that you could sort of forward on to parents, or have you had a look at those sorts of things. Also, the British Nutrition Foundation. It's a very good website. Find out a lot about that. There's a lot of information on there regarding breastfeeding and supporting the baby with that weaning process and those kind of things too. And then we've got the WHO Healthy Diet Fact Sheet, so sort of a global nutritional advice as well with WHO.
Amazing, absolutely. And of course, you've got the NHS website and Public Health England as well, with lots of advice. And places like Pinterest are brilliant for little recipes, as well as, you know, old-fashioned probably sounds, but cookbooks. You know, there's lots of children's meal cookbooks of ways to, you know, sneak extra veggies in and get them involved. And as I mentioned earlier, making it into an activity that perhaps they could take home, about cooking together, especially for obviously the older children, about getting involved in preparing their own food. You know, not talking about giving them knives, of course, but
but there is also the argument there, Ellen, that, you know, again, I've known a lot of children who have knives at a lot younger ages, and again, it's promoting that safety and that independence. And again, it's a big thing being seen at the moment, is from toddler age, children are preparing all their own food.
See, that holistic development touches every aspect.
Absolutely.
Food is such a big part of our lives. It really is.
For the good. And it should be. Enjoy it.
Absolutely. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the topics we've covered and answer any questions you might have about what we've discussed. Your input really does help shape our conversations.
So don't forget to like, share and follow this podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation going about early years. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.